All right, this is what I like to have around when I clean the tank. So Cava wipes, WD-40, but this specific kind because it works a lot faster than the regular stuff. Autoclave tape, Teflon tape, an adjustable wrench. You'll also see paper towels on the side, a long Q-tip, aluminum wrap, 70% ethanol, cotton pads, Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, and a few other things that aren't pictured, like distilled white vinegar, razor with the safety handle, scissors. But right now I'm putting my gloves on, and normally I wear a lab coat and make sure that the sleeves were tucked into the gloves just for the ease of filming. However, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm a researcher, so I wanted to make sure I could actually get the footage, but also demonstrate to you why we wear a lab coat doing this activity, and also why we do this in the hood. We should be doing this within the biosafety cabinet, but again, this was an issue with me not being able to film properly, and it's really also important for you to see the procedure that I do. So I've put gloves on. I've now taken the lid off the tank. I've looked in the tank because I emptied it previously. The tank still has liquid in it, so I'm going to start off by just emptying whatever residue is left from the sheath fluid from the previous run. And now I'll take it back. So again, you want to do this in the hood because you don't know what type of mold, particles, things might be in the air. So you'll notice that I am now going to hit the sheath line that's in there because I want to make sure that anything that's stuck there falls down into the bottom so that I can empty it out, because if that goes into the autoclave, then it's going to stick to the bottom and crystallize. Sure, it'll be sterile crystals, but we don't want that. So now I'm just going to spray the non-sterile paper towels with a little bit of ethanol, and then I'm going to dry up whatever's in there for now. So again, you see that you really want to be wearing a lab coat for this, because the idea of doing this is getting rid of organic matter, because autoclaving doesn't remove organic matter. Bleach is also inactivated by organic matter. So if I'm putting my hand in there or my arm in there and there's like dead skin sloughing off, because all of us, that's what we do. We slough off dead skin, hair falls out. We're human beings. We're not machines. So these are just things that happen. So if I'm doing this with my arms bare, that's not optimal, but I really wanted to show you that. I think that's really important. So now that I've dried that out, I'm removing the sheath probe. So this probe cannot go into the autoclave. These probes cost like almost $2,000. So if they break, it's quite expensive. There's also a tag on it from the manufacturer that says do not autoclave. But of course, if a tank is older or not well cared for, these things fall off. It's normal, it happens. So I've now gotten the wrench, adjusted it, I've removed it, and now I'm gonna just wrap the end of it in the aluminum so that I can just keep handling it. And it makes it easier for me to hold on to, but then also easy to store until I'm ready to actually decontaminate it later. But the other thing that I want to do right now is go ahead and remove the old Teflon tape on there. So we're going to need to put new Teflon tape when we put the probe back on, but we don't want to put it on top of the old tape. And if we just keep putting it on top of the old tape, it's just going to create a mess later that could potentially attract rust or other kind of microorganisms to stick there. So even though you're going to see it's a little onerous, I'll speed this up momentarily, but I do want to talk about just making sure to keep up with your maintenance. And that seems like a small thing, but over time, if you don't keep up with it, it will become less small and potentially kind of troublesome. And as you can see, even right now with a fresh Teflon tape that hasn't been in use for a while, it's kind of hard to remove. Right now you're going to see me get a razor blade and the Q-tip so I can get the remnants off the probe and the thread on the tank. But now that I've finished with that, I am going to go ahead and grab some of the other items I need, the WD-40 and some cotton pads, and just in case, I also have Mr. Clean Magic Eraser in case I see any rust anywhere on the tank. So now I'm gonna spray some WD-40 on the cotton pad. I use a heavier duty WD-40 that takes a lot less time to act so that I can get any of the old residue of the autoclave tape off of the side of the tank. I don't want to ruin the finish of the tank, but most importantly, keeping all of the sticky, gooey stuff from previous autoclave runs is going to be an attractant for dirt and potentially other microorganisms that you just don't want in your tank. Filling the tank in general, whether you're autoclaving it or just topping it off, is a main point for contamination because it requires so much contact. So just keeping your tank as clean as possible, even just on the outside, is really helpful in potentially reducing the chances of contaminating your sheath fluid. Now that I've completed that step, I'm going to grab my 70% ethanol and I'm going to spray ethanol all into the tank. So I actually did 50 sprays because I've measured that each spray is about 1 ml. And so I'm trying to cover the entire surface of the inside of the tank. And then I'm going to let it sit while I do another activity, which is going to be clean the surface of the lid of the tank and then put it into another container. In general, the recommendation is 10 minutes of contact time to kill microorganisms using 70% ethanol. We're not going to get to 10 minutes of time, but right now our purpose isn't necessarily to kill microorganisms, it's to remove the organic matter. So a little more contact time doesn't hurt, but again, the fact that we don't get to 10 minutes is not the end of the world for this purpose. Additionally, the amount that I put on there is going to evaporate somewhat during that time, so that's the other reason we're not going to get to 10 minutes of contact time, but it's okay. Right now I'm just putting away the razor blade that I used for removing the Teflon tape from the probe, just for safety reasons. I don't want it in my way. So now I'm grabbing the autoclave safe container that I used to separately place the lid when I put it into the autoclave. Whoops. Alright, just clearing my tiny workspace. Again, I don't normally work on this as a workspace, but I wanted to be able to film this easily because again, I'm not a videographer, but the most important part is that you see what I do when I do this kind of preparation to place the tank in the autoclave. So right now I'm removing the O-ring from the lid, and I'm just taking a Cava wipe and removing any dirt, any extra sheath fluid that is dried out on it, and I'm also monitoring it for any cracks that may have formed in the rubber. So not just visually, but also by feeling it with my fingers, if there's any sort of crack within that rubber. So now I'm just kind of wiping it down. I can't really get it off that easily, the top little bulb on the lid, so I just got a paper towel so that I could easily remove it. And so now I'm taking these bulb and other knob off and placing them in the container. You can see it takes a minute. And so now I'm separating both components of the lid, and now I'm going to wipe down with Cava wipes. And I'm taking care to remove any residue of sheath fluid, and you'll see that dried out. Also any dirt, because again, there are a lot of opportunities for contact while you refill the sheath tank, so that creates a lot of opportunity for potential contamination. Now that I'm done cleaning the components of the lid, I'm going to cover the autoclave safe container with aluminum and then secure that down with autoclave tape. So now I'm going to remove the container from my workspace so that I can continue preparing the tank. Right now I'm going to take the tank over to the sink so that I can empty out any ethanol that has pooled at the bottom, and then I'm going to rinse 2 times with DI water from the Milq. Some people like to rinse 3 times, but I've found that 2 times is sufficient for this purpose. Now that the ethanol's been rinsed out, I'm going to get paper towels to dry out all of the liquid from the tank. And since they're not sterile, I give them a quick spray with ethanol. It may not be necessary, but I just feel better about doing that, just in case anything has settled onto the paper towels. And again, I use paper towels specifically and not Kim wipes, because Kim wipes are meant for lighter duty tasks. It really is very important to make sure that there's no residue of paper towel or any other debris at the bottom of the tank, because once we fill this up, if, for example, we're doing submicron work and we choose to run without a filter, we don't want any particles to go through any of the sheath lines. We want it to be completely clean when we pour the sheath in, so it's really critical to make sure there's nothing left behind. Now I'm grabbing another paper towel so I can dry off any liquid that might be on the side of the tank. And then also I've already gone over this with a cotton pad to remove WD-40, but in case there's still any residue, this also helps to remove that. All right, so now I'm going to get some aluminum and cover all of the openings of the tank. Since the autoclave uses steam, we don't want any water to be remaining in the tank after it comes out of the autoclave. So all of the openings need to be closed. Granted, we don't want to close it with the lid because then the pressure is going to build up and it'll actually explode in the autoclave. That's not what we want. But if we cover it with foil, that's enough to make sure we don't get any liquid pooling, but also not cause an explosion. So then I'm going to fasten it down with autoclave tape. So that's why before we cleaned off the remnants of the autoclave tape, because from previous autoclave runs, some of that goo gets left behind. And if you never maintain it, then it's just going to be covered in goo, because it's not like you autoclave this once and never autoclave it again. You want to do this on a regular basis or before any submicron sort where you're going to be running without a filter. Then the next pieces that we're going to cover are going to be all of the connections. So you're going to grab some more aluminum and then just split it up so that way you can cover the two remaining connections that were not covered. And there are some sharp ends on there that can sometimes pierce the foil, so that's why I doubled it up. And then I want it to still be fastened to the rest, so I've just put a little bit more autoclave tape so I can fasten it to the rest of the foil that I had put on earlier. Alright, so I'm just finishing up clearing off my cart, since this would be the cart that I would use to take things down to the autoclave. And then you're going to want this to be your final product of things you're taking to the autoclave. I'm just now going to get my autoclave gloves because the autoclave can be very hot to put things in and take things out of. You'll want to put this in for 1 cycle, ideally the dry cycle, but if you want to save time and autoclave your sheath and glass bottles at the same time, then you can use the liquid cycle.